All right, welcome back to my spiritual podcast. My name is George Poulos. This is a podcast where I sit down in half lotus in my bedroom and I talk about whatever's on my mind. And somehow I manage to make everything that's going on in my life a spiritual lesson. I shouldn't say it like that because really I think it's actually a beautiful and profound way to look at life. Not to toot my own horn, but life update. Just got back from leg day at the gym. I've been really loving the gym routine. It's kind of one of those things. I'm not going to lie, like I've been slipping lately. I've been slipping into forgetfulness. I think it's just probably something that happens to me every winter, and I always forget that it happens to me every winter, like a little bit of depression, a little bit of a lack of faith, a little bit of like questioning, what am I doing with my life? Am I making mistakes? Am I doing everything wrong? It's kind of this general freak out about the course of my life. This seems to happen every winter. I'm recording this on March 1st, and spring is coming. We'll see what changes that brings. Spring is a season of change. I expect it will bring a lot of change, certainly in the internal feeling. It's important in the winter, especially if you are in a place that has a cold winter, a cold, dreary, short-dayed winter. It's important to remember that it is just a season, and the seasons change and flow. And as the seasons change and flow, we are inextricably tied to the seasons. We are a part of this earth. We are an output of the universe where we are directly tied to us. It's not only winter outside, it's also winter inside. And as it turns to spring, it will turn to spring within us as well. So that's something I like to remind myself when I do start feeling down in the winter, that it's because it's winter and it's okay. And it's good not to add that extra layer of being hard on yourself for feeling down, which is something I have been kind of guilty of lately. It's interesting, since I've kind of been in such a lull lately. I don't know, like there's been anxiety. Like I feel like I haven't had anxiety in a long time, but suddenly like I feel like there's a weight on things. You know, something I write about a lot on my TikTok is not being in a rush and going about the day as if you have all the time in the world, like taking your time with the laundry, with the dishes, with getting out of bed, not rushing to the subway, you know, walking slowly. If you miss the train, get the next one. But I've caught myself rushing more, and I've caught myself in the headspace as if these things are life or death. Like I have to sit down and record this podcast on time as if it's life or death. And at least I'm noticing now, you know, that I have been slipping. It's almost like in meditation, when you're trying to focus on the breath, when you catch yourself lost in thought, what you want to do is just gently bring yourself back to the breath. And you actually want to celebrate the fact that you've caught yourself. You caught yourself slipping and you've brought yourself back gently. That's a good thing, because you could have not caught in yourself. You could have slipped up, gotten wrapped up in a thought, and you could have been consumed in that thought for your entire meditation session. But you caught yourself. You remembered that you were trying to meditate and you brought yourself back to the breath. That can happen over and over and over again, and it's something worth celebrating. So too with our lives, right? Meditation is just a mirror for how we're going to live our lives. When you catch yourself in a rush throughout the day for no good reason, in fight or flight for no good reason, that's something to celebrate, that you caught yourself, that you noticed that you were acting out of conditioning, that you were acting out of ego, whatever story your ego has told you to convince you that you must be in a rush to do the laundry. You caught yourself, you come back to center. That's something to celebrate, because that means you're in the process of coming home, of awakening. So this realization is coming to me as I'm speaking out loud. I've been a little hard on myself, a little disappointed that I have been experiencing anxiety. But this act of sitting in the podcast and noticing it and actually coming back to center is something to celebrate. And I think that's a beautiful mindset to take with you as you traverse your own spiritual journey. It's like, as you catch yourself losing faith, slipping up, acting based on ego, being forgetful in whatever way it manifests for you, when you notice that, don't be hard on yourself. Just come back to center, just like you come back to the breath and meditation after you get lost in a thought. That's a beautiful mindset that I haven't even thought of. It just came to me. That's the beauty of this podcast, is things just come out when you free flow and expression. Shout out the stream of consciousness. I don't know, am I repeating myself when I say this? But this is the first podcast I'm recording that I actually know is going out to the public. So I actually feel something different in my body. There's a little bit more fear almost. There's a little bit of past patterns are resurfacing because I'm bringing this podcast back to the public. I spent like 2 to 3 days like freaking out about the branding of this podcast. Like when it was just for Patreon, it didn't matter. What mattered was that I was being truthful in my expression, and I was just expressing what I needed to express. That's all that mattered. The name of the podcast didn't matter. The thumbnails didn't matter. Something happened when I decided that I was going to make the podcast public again. I was like, oh shit, it has to look good on Spotify. Like I need to pick the right name. Like, is my spiritual podcast a weird name because it has like a possessive pronoun and is spiritual too niche? And what are people, from high school who still follow me on Instagram and extended family going to think when they see that I'm doing a podcast about spirituality? Are they going to think I've lost my mind? And that spiral lends into, am I making a giant mistake overall? Should I have never left the skateboarding YouTube channel? Should I be still taking brand deals? This is what I'm talking about. This is one example of what I'm talking about when I say that I've been slipping lately. But again, I'm proud of myself for being aware of the slip and noticing it, and noticing that here in my heart center, I'm still here. I'm still aware of this all. That freak out about the public branding of the podcast felt almost like a test from the universe, because I have been through a long journey of what I would call people pleasing in terms of the art I create. And somebody left a mean comment on my Instagram. It's always on Instagram. It's always the audience that I built in the past, it seems. Anyways, someone left a mean comment on Instagram saying I keep repeating myself and saying the same things. Yeah, because like patterns in life, they repeat, and they repeat over and over and over again until you figure them out, right? Like you could repeat the same toxic relationship pattern over and over and over again until you figure it out. And this is the nature, I think, of becoming aware, is unpacking similar patterns over and over and over again. And I'm not really, that comment made me feel self-conscious, because I know I talk about my past a lot. I talk about escaping from my old attachments. I do talk about similar things a lot, but it's like, these attachments that I'm untangling, that I bring up over and over again, like that's the difference between being miserable and being free. So it's like, this is really important, like for me to understand what's happening for myself And it does take a lot of repetition. Anyways, I've been through, and the artist way is really what broke me out of this. I've been through creating art for the sake of public approval. And it's not for me anymore. And when I slipped into overthinking about the podcast branding, I was almost going back to that place. And let me tell you, I do not want to go back to that place. I remember agonizing over every title and thumbnail of every single YouTube video I posted every Friday. This was just a little crisis about the podcast branding, which is just one name. But I was having this crisis every single week. And I felt myself like back in that place. And there's almost this fear that like my progress has reversed. Like I'm all the way back there. That's a really scary thought. But what's different now is there is an awareness of what's happening. I see this pattern. I see myself participating in this pattern. So that is a pretty major difference. Is in the past, I was fully engrossed in this pattern. I was in this crisis about branding each video. This time around, a few years later, post-spiritual awakening, I caught myself in the grips of the same pattern, but the difference is, like I've been saying, this time I caught myself. It's really actually similar to that metaphor I'm building about meditation. It's like this time I got wrapped up in that I was fight or flight, feeling like it was life or death. I have to pick the right podcast name so that everybody likes it. But then I became aware that this was happening, and I was like, no, wait, I can come right back to center, just like in meditation, you just bring your focus back to the breath. And I can remember, oh yeah, I've learned that I don't actually want to, nor do I need to, seek the general public's approval of this podcast. This is why I moved to Patreon in the first place. I actually want to attract only the people who are purely interested in it. And I think this is a great wisdom for other creatives and artists out there. But more generally, it's like, are you going to live your life or create your art in a way that makes you feel like everybody is going to like it? Or are you just going to be you? Or are you just going to create the art that you want to create? Because if you are just you, then only the people who like you are going to gravitate towards you. Only the people who like your art will gravitate towards your art. I could go my whole life trying to appeal to the masses, sacrificing my soul in the process, and I probably will win some people over, but they're being won over by something that isn't even really me. So, like, I caught myself almost repeating that same lesson and going into that same hole, but I'm like, okay, no, it's like, I don't want to make art for public approval. I don't want to make art for money. If those things come, I will be appreciative. But if they don't, that's fine because I'm being true. Because I've been slipping, I decided to take some brute force measures to try to take care of myself and bring myself back to the center. So I thought of this idea that I would stop going on social media over the weekends, right? When I start spiraling in life, when I start entering a period of forgetfulness, that tends to come hand in hand with like an escapism through a hyper phone addiction. So I'll find myself scrolling on TikTok, on Instagram a lot, to the point where it hurts to be out of center, to not be following my intuition. It hurts. And the easy way out is to just go on my phone and numb that pain. The hard thing to do, but the right thing to do, is to sit with the discomfort and feel what's happening and try to bring your focus back to your center, to your intuition. No social media Saturdays and Sundays. This popped in my head and immediately I felt it was a brilliant idea, because it's hard to combat the phone addiction. Like I've talked about in the episode about smashing my phone, I think the phones and social media are one of the biggest challenges that our generation is dealing with. And it's really hard. It's like I'll speak for myself. I'll kind of come up with these intentions to go on my phone less, but it just creeps up on you. And I've been trying really for years. Like this phone I have right by my side, this used to be my work phone. This phone was the only so I had two phones. That phone that's recording would have no social media on it. That's the one I would bring out with me when I left the house. This work phone with social media would stay on the desk. That was one more drastic attempt at combating my phone addiction. Here's a new one that I'm really excited about, and it's simply that: no social media on Saturdays and Sundays. So for me, that's going to be no Instagram, no TikTok, no email. I want to encourage everyone listening to participate in this mindfulness challenge for March with me. I'm personally really excited about this. I created a wallpaper that I'm going to be switching to my wallpaper every Saturday as a reminder not to go on social media. Everyone who's a member of the Patreon will have access to download that wallpaper. And I did this last weekend, right? I'm recording this on a Thursday, so I've been back on social media Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Last weekend, the first weekend doing this, it was tough. It was hard. I was resisting constantly urges to pick up my phone. Constantly, really. And this whole experience was fascinating. And I was like, in that place of awareness about the whole thing, I was like, oh, look at that urge to check social media. Look at that urge to check social media. Noticing that it's just coming up constantly. In every down moment, there's an urge to pick up social media. Even moments when I'm with people, there's an urge to pick up social media. And as I was like being aware of the urge, it's like I could already tell that what I was going to do is flip open TikTok, check my views, flip open Instagram, check if there was any comments, things like that, and then close them. Like, what's the point? As Saturday slipped into Sunday, I started feeling really light and free, and like a lot of fog had cleared from my brain. And it was really, really a wonderful, beautiful feeling. And I accomplished that with just 1 to 2 days of not going on social media. So I'm excited to keep doing this every weekend. And what I experienced by Monday, there was a little bit of excitement to get back on social media, but there was also a feeling of dread of like, oh, like, do I really have to go back on? Like, I wish Sunday was a little bit longer so that I could continue not going on social media. And I think what's cool about this challenge, and again, I encourage you all to participate in this with me for the month of March, and if it goes well, why not integrate it into our lives? What's cool is it's an easy challenge to wrap your mind around. It's not an arbitrary intention. It's like, on these days, I'm not going to open social media. And that's going to actually what I'm excited about is that's going to give me life experience. If we do this for March, it's going to be 4 weekends of life without social media. So we're actually going to be able to, if you've been addicted to your phone for a long time like I have, we're going to actually be able to re-access that state of being that we haven't accessed in a long, long time of what being is like without a phone and social media addiction. That's going to give us a basis of comparison. How do the days without social media feel compared to the days with social media? What I'm thinking is that's going to start rolling a natural motion. Did I say that phrase right? It's going to initiate a natural process where we're going to be like, oh, I think social media is bad for me. And I think I'm going to cut it back even more. That's kind of the goal with this challenge, is not to brute force quit social media, but to gently show ourselves what it could be like without social media or with less social media. So that, because I don't think that combating an addiction really works by brute force. It's like the addictive behavior has to fall away because you have to come to the realization, like the true belief and realization that the addiction is not serving you. That's how it falls away. So I'm thinking that this challenge could help us reach this place, and I'm really excited about it. And it's like, even if for the rest of my life I do no social media Saturdays and Sundays, and then I'm still as addicted as I am now during the week, it's like, okay, at least I've got weekends. At least I've got these pure weekends without this toxic addiction. It's hard, man, but I think this is a cool one, and I don't know why I haven't thought of this yet. And the wallpaper also makes it a lot more fun. So again, that's available for patrons. Feel free to join me. Tomorrow I'm going to record my first guided meditation for patrons. So I'm excited to try that, and it will be a fun experiment that we can do together. That's patreon.com/George Poulos. Gotta plug stuff now because it's public. And yeah, I guess I do. It would be cool if I could make money from this. Like, I will get a job. It's like being true in my art is important enough. I will get a job, but I think I'd rather survive and thrive off of my inherent creativity. I think that would be cool. I finally got comfortable with drawing on my iPad. It's funny. It was like in the summer, I took a long bike ride to buy this iPad and Apple Pencil off of Facebook Marketplace. And I actually think I talked about it on the podcast. I talked about investing in your inner artist. There was like some impulse in me to buy that iPad that I couldn't really identify, but I knew that I just needed to go buy it. And a lesson I learned as well in the artist way is that, like, when you have the craving to buy a creative tool that you're going to play with and that's going to make you happy, that's probably a good investment to make. So I bought that iPad with the backing of that lesson, and it was really sitting around for a long time until recently I started playing around with it more. And like, the purpose of why I bought that iPad in the past is now revealed. I've been writing in it as if it's my journal, and I actually am feeling that intimate connection as if it's my journal. And then I've been sharing little journal entries on my second Instagram, and that's been a lot of fun. Yeah, and if I can, when I'm really in that place of being centered, and I really accept, like, I don't care if my creative work makes money. Oh, I just feel so free. But that's a big attachment I'm still working on untangling. Ooh, I might have to uncross these lotus legs. Oh, brother. This one's going to hurt. Ooh, on leg day, too. Woo. Right now I'm reading Awareness by OSHO. Still reading OSHO. He's still cracking me open. Awareness is a good one, and it definitely influenced the language I was using in this podcast already. He basically speaks to like he basically poses the question, as you're doing things, as you're with your lover, as you're grocery shopping, as you're getting angry at someone, as you're washing the dishes, as you're at your job, are you aware of what you're doing? Are you in that place of awareness, or are you operating unconsciously? And basically, he suggests, as often as you can, be aware. Just be aware of what you're doing, right? This speaks to the podcast episode I did about being the observer. It's that place within you that's aware of everything that's happening. It's that place within you that when you're meditating is simultaneously aware of the breath, aware of all the passing thoughts. It's the place within you that's not tied up in the thoughts, but that is simply aware of them passing, right? In the big open field of your consciousness. The observer is that which is aware of everything. It's that which is aware of your body, that which is aware of your identity, right? It's that peaceful, higher self, you could say. So that's what awareness is about. It's about how to cultivate that awareness. I'm liking it so far. Still no match to Intimacy. Intimacy was still my favorite Osho book. But I'm still planning on reading probably all of his books eventually. And then I don't know exactly what I'm going to read next, but I have a big stack to choose from. And I've been spending a lot of money on books, and I need to chill out. So one of them in the stack is the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. This was recommended by a friend. I have no idea what it's about. Well, it's about yoga, but beyond that, I don't know. And then I recently did a haul. Went to the bookstore. Got Oneness with All Life by Eckhart Tolle. Transitions by Julia Cameron. And the fourth Ram Dass book in my collection, How Can I Help? So I'm excited about all of these. I don't know in what order they will go, but oh yeah, and I've been like not really. Oh, I also want to read Walden by Thoreau. That's in the stack over there. I also have I'm looking over there. I've got 3 more Osho books that will come later: Courage, Joy, and Maturity. And then I've also got the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And then I've also got Original Sin is a Lie by my TikTok buddy, Bob Peck. So I've got a big stack of books to work with. That's kind of how I like it. I want to completely, there's some open space in this shelf. I want this shelf to be really filled with the essential books that have guided me and that have spoken to me, books that I believe to be truth. I want to fill this shelf with those. So far, there's still some books that really don't belong here, but it's filling up, and it's feeling really good to kind of have this shrine of books with the Buddha on top. Oh, you can't really see it. Oopsie. If you're listening on Spotify, I post these on YouTube too. By the way. Just search My Spiritual Podcast with George Poulos. Will that actually come up? I don't know if that will come up. I'm going to try it. And sometimes I forget I don't have to be in a rush when I record this. Let's see. My Spiritual Podcast. Speaking of the brand identity crisis, I mean, what I came to was the realization that, like, it does come up if you search My Spiritual Podcast with George Poulos. Cool. The realization I came to is what is important is that I sit down here in half lotus, I get present, and I speak my heart. That's what really matters. The branding, it doesn't really matter. It's not life or death. But while I'm on the topic, if you have a great idea for the podcast, feel free to share it. I'm open. Like, I'd like not to be attached to it, and I'd like if this podcast only gets the 30 views of those original patrons. I'd like to be completely content with that, but like, there's a part of me that's like, it'd be pretty cool if like a lot of people resonate and enjoy the podcast, and that would feel good. And when I was deep in that branding crisis, there was a thought of like, my spiritual podcast, is that like too niche? Is that because I guess I tend to make everything a spiritual insight, but it's also kind of just like I'm envious of like Anything Goes by Emma Chamberlain, and podcasts with names like that are just so like, I speak a lot about not boxing myself in. I was having the thought of like, am I repeating a mistake by claiming that this podcast is about spirituality? Now, I think that's actually a genuine question for me to meditate on. Because what if one day speaking about spirituality is not in alignment for me anymore? I like that Emma can talk about spirituality if she wants to, but she can also talk about whatever else. And it's all spiritual anyways, right? Like, does it really need to be labeled with that? And then am I turning people off by using that label? So that was my thought as to why I should maybe pick a different name. Something that can leave me open if I want to take it in a different direction, so I won't have to like with the skate channel, it was so, but I guess it's like, if I need to move on, why not just move on again? I don't know. So 2 past iterations of this podcast were called Dropping In with George Poulos. That was like a skate play on words, dropping in, like dropping in on a ramp. So I don't want to do that one anymore. But I did call it Head High with George Poulos for a time, and I'm curious if that resonates with the listeners, or do you get a good feeling from my spiritual podcast? I guess I'm not alone in this, and I'm allowed to ask for your opinion. So please, if you have an opinion, let me know, whether it be in the YouTube comments, patrons, of course, in our Discord, or you can always DM me. And listeners, where will the listeners? I think the Spotify listeners have voice messages. I actually got a really nice voice message that I really appreciated recently. And you could also email me. Email hello@georgepoulos.com. But let me know what you think about the name, because I don't know. I'm trying not to freak about it, but it is a thing that's existing there in the space of my consciousness, and I don't know if ignoring it is the right thing to do. I wonder if there will be a day where I stop talking about the podcast itself. Like, if I actually get confident enough to just do the podcast without talking about the fact that I'm doing a podcast. But right now, it is what it is. So here's a question that I got on YouTube. Patrons get priority when asking questions for the podcast. Patrons, feel free to DM or comment on any post if you ever have a question you want me to address. So here's the question. I was doing yoga nidra meditation daily for months. It was working every time, making me feel extremely present, free, and mentally energized. But recently, I've been finding that I just fall asleep during the practice and can't engage. Does anyone have any tips, as I've noticed my life become less enjoyable since this shift? So, I don't know what yoga nidra meditation is. I'm going to Google that real quick in case there's a quick answer. But I assume it's like a sitting down, fairly basic meditation. Okay. I see images of people lying flat on their back, so that makes sense that you would fall asleep. Yoga Nidra is a state of consciousness between waking and sleeping, typically induced by a guided meditation. Okay, really interesting. Okay, so I'm not surprised you're actually falling asleep if you're laying flat. So my answer to this question, I have a few things to say, a couple things to say. One is that in a lot of the Buddhist texts I've learned, for example, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind by Suzuki, I believe. A lot of these Buddhist texts promote the idea of meditating sitting down with a straight back, and the straight back has to do with alertness. If you're sitting up with a straight back, you're super unlikely to fall asleep, because it's like a position where your body is supposed to like stack up, so there's not supposed to be too much effort required to hold it, but it's going to be pretty unlikely that you're going to fall asleep sitting up with your back straight. So you could try a meditation that's not lying flat on your back. I'm guessing if you're drawn to the Nidra meditation, there's something in it that you like. So I'm not going to suggest totally dismissing the practice that you like. But in terms of falling asleep with that particular meditation, I don't know that I have any advice for that. Especially if it's supposed to be a half sleep, half waking state of consciousness. What first popped in my head when I read this question, and I didn't actually realize it was about a lying flat down meditation, but if anyone struggles with staying focused during any old meditation for that matter, like if you do sit down meditations in cross-legged or half lotus and you find yourself getting sleepy, or on the other end, if you find yourself getting bored, right, the sleepiness and the boredom could both be used as objects of meditation while you're sitting there. Like you can be sitting there in your meditation posture, and if you're noticing yourself getting sleepy, try to access that observer who is aware that you are getting sleepy and notice what it feels like to be sleepy. And if you're getting wrapped up in your sleepiness and you can catch it, like I was saying in the beginning of the episode, then you can just bring yourself back to the breath if you're focusing on your meditation in that way, right? Or like however your meditation looks, if you notice yourself getting wrapped up in sleepiness, catch yourself and bring yourself back. What I like to do, like my favorite kinds of meditations is like when I just slip into being aware. Like I actually don't like to focus on the breath or anything in particular. I just like to sit there, usually with my eyes closed, and notice like every sensation that's happening. Like just try to sit in the state of pure awareness. So if there's a sleepiness coming, I'll actually just notice and be curious about the sleepiness until I notice something else coming. Say I notice boredom, I'll just notice and like be attentive to that boredom and what does that actually feel like, and be curious about it, and how does my body go from, or how does my consciousness go from noticing whatever the sensation of boredom feels like, how does it convert those sensations into the definition, I am bored? These are the sorts of things I like to do when I'm sitting in meditation. If you are struggling with sleepiness or boredom in your meditations, what I recommend is a walking meditation. And this goes hand in hand with the discussion earlier in the episode about how like meditation really is a parallel to life. It's not really about sitting here in meditation. What it's about is that this is a way of life. It's a way to see that which is there, to see clearly that which is there, because usually there are clouds in the way. So that does not have to be done strictly sitting down. Obviously, there are benefits to having a stricter practice, but something I like to do a lot is just go over to the local park here and walk around the circle in a meditative state. So if we compare it to a meditation where you're focusing on the breath, you could go for a walk and your object of focus could be walking, right? You want to be aware that you're walking. You want to be very present on your walk with the scene around you, with your steps, with the sensation of walking, with the breeze, all of this stuff around you, you want to be there, right? And then when you get lost in a thought while you're walking, if you can catch it, you want to pull yourself back to your focus of meditation, which is the act of walking, and you want to be present again and try to prolong that presence for as long as you can. That's essentially parallel to a meditation where you're sitting down and focusing on your breath, and when you get wrapped up in a thought, you notice that you got lost, and then you pull yourself back to the breath. It's the same thing. You can do it on a walk, and I find this a much more engaging, a more fun and engaging kind of meditation that if you've never tried, I recommend everybody try it. And really, like, eventually, if you stick with meditation, it will hit a point where you can meditate like this throughout your entire life. And it's kind of like, again, this is totally unplanned, but it's a lot of parallels in this episode. Like, I can look at my whole life as a meditation, and that forgetfulness, that slump I've been describing, it's like I can catch myself being anxious or being in fight or flight or overthinking about the branding of the podcast. And then since I'm aware, since I caught myself, I can pull myself back to center, to what I know, to the truth of the matter, which is that, oh, I'm here. I'm already home. There's nothing to chase. There's nothing to accomplish. There's nothing to accomplish. Everything I want, I already have within me. It's all right here, right? I can catch myself and pull myself back to that center. That's why when we meditate, we catch ourselves getting lost in thought or lost in anxiety or what we have to do that day, and we pull ourselves back. It's a big mirror to a way in which we could live our lives. And it's an important practice to cultivate, because unless any of us reach the true samadhi, the true state of enlightenment, where we are permanently living in pure love, we're gonna have periods where we forget, you know? We're gonna have periods where we're like, holy shit, is this all just me being crazy, and should I go back to how everyone wants me to be? And we're going to get anxious, and we're going to get wrapped up in thoughts that are in the past and the future. So it's important to cultivate that skill of becoming aware that you've slipped and gently bringing yourself back to the center. Yeah, and if you're falling asleep during yoga nidra meditation, be aware of the sensation of falling asleep, you know? I'm not too much of a strict meditator. That's kind of the way that I'm going. I don't think it needs to be so strict. And again, on the Patreon, I'm going to start doing a weekly guided meditation. It's a new experiment I'm trying. I think I want to get a meditation teacher training done later this year. So this will be like my kind of first foray into seeing if I actually like guiding meditations and teaching meditations. So patreon.com/George Poulos. Other things I want to shout out are my merch on georgepoulos.com/store. I've got some original designs that I've made. A couple of the things, like you've probably seen my Let Go and my Let Be tattoos on my wrists. These are original designs I've made that really cool. Like, I really do look at these. Like, when I'm in a period of forgetfulness, I look at these Let Go and Let Be, and they help me. They help me because I know that when I got these tattooed, I was in that place of center, and they can help bring me back. And they're so simple. The lessons of Let Go and Let Be are so simple. They can make all the knowing come flooding back. So I've got those designs up on a couple different products, and you'll see. So that's a great way to support. Let me scan my note as always. We've been going for 52, maybe shorter for you guys because I think I was dilly-dallying at the beginning, but I should have read this note while I was talking about the mindfulness challenge, but don't forget about the mindfulness challenge for March. If you want to join with me, we're doing no social media Saturdays and Sundays for the month of March. Something I forgot to say, a benefit I've already found from this challenge, is that I told you that I kind of got the ick about getting back on social media on Monday. Something I'm experiencing now is I'm really excited for the weekend because I'm not going to be on social media at all. It's like, it feels like there's more of a deep rest that's going to come with the weekend. So I'm really excited to get to Saturday and get off the social media apps again, switch to that wallpaper again that's available to patrons that says no social media. That's going to feel really good. Yeah, and another thing I wrote that I never mentioned about that challenge was that, like, on Monday when I was, like, allowed to use social media again, there was, like, literally like a feeling of nausea. Like, I was nauseated because after the break of the weekend, I kind of had more of a bird's eye view on everything. And, like, I just saw how horribly addicted to this stuff I am. And so I was, like, a little nauseated that I've been living my life this way for so long. So let's do this challenge. Let me know your thoughts as we go. I'll be sharing as well. Fuck social media, you know? I know it's kind of dope, but, like, also fuck that. Cool. I think this was the episode. Yeah, happy to have y'all listening. Another week up ahead. We'll see where we are in another week. I'll see you then. At this point, episodes will be rolling out once a week, not once a day. So that's more manageable for you guys probably too, you know. All right. Namaste. Can I say namaste? I did it. All right. Peace.